So hi, I'm Bob. This is the AEON3 meetings that are discussions of the future of mankind. We have gone all around different subjects. Most of you have followed along and watched that. We are live on Facebook, so I want to say hi to everybody out there on Facebook who's watching right now. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Great, so on with the show. So a little overview on AEON3. So we have a lot of new people here tonight, as we do almost every week. We meet every Tuesday here, and we do broadcast live on Facebook. We also have a YouTube channel called AEON3, AEON3, because that's how you spell Eon, by the way. And on there is all the videos with better sound. They've been edited. They're just awesome. So if you want to go check them out, that's great. So AEON3, what is it about? So AEON3 is based on an idea that I came up with a long time ago when I was very young in the software business. I should tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Bob. I've been in the software industry since the late 70s, early 80s. I've worked for most of the major software companies that are out there. I've developed all kinds of software, and then I have just became a serial entrepreneur. I've started many companies, which I have only a few now, which is good. But I really got this idea about how technology is affecting the evolution of mankind and how it's changing us. And it really has fascinated me since a young age. And I came up with some theories when I was in my early 20s that I began talking to people about very incessantly, which really annoyed them and frustrated a lot of people. So this is a continuation of those thoughts and concepts. The basic concept is the first eon of man was millions of years long. And you'll see this as a reoccurring theme. And then suddenly at one point in history, mankind changed. And we changed very abruptly, and we changed all over the world, which is a really interesting moment. And we became a different kind of creature. We were no longer at the whim of nature. We weren't just completely, running around trying to not be killed all the time. We suddenly began to use nature as a tool and began to develop into societies and the things that we see today. That's the second eon. So the first eon is the millions of years we lived basically as animals. The second eon is when we began to write things down and what I call visualize shapes, which I'm actually stealing from a book called Guns, Germs, and Steel, which I reference pretty regularly. So we're approaching the shift from the second eon to the third eon. So we are still in the second eon. We're very much still a part of nature. We're under the thumb of nature. We live and we die, and we live basically still as animals, although very advanced animals, right? We don't consider ourselves part of the animal kingdom, although obviously we are, right? So it's a challenge. We visualize ourselves as something different, and that is the precursor to the third eon. The third eon is when we become not part of nature anymore, and we become something very different than what we are today. And I spent a lot of time talking about this, and please go watch the YouTube videos. I do want to say also that I am not, especially on tonight's subject, an engineer. There are many engineers in the audience. I can tell just by your demeanor and the things in the pregame that you guys were talking about. I am not an engineer. I'm a philosopher and a computer science guy and a futurist and an entrepreneur. So those are all the labels, basically, I think in a nutshell, that I get labeled with. Visionary sometimes, but that's more normally about software, not about the future. Most of the stuff I talk about in the future is stuff that's already happened. I don't really reach out. It seems a lot of times like I'm reaching out and showing you things from the far future, but actually in almost every case I'm showing you stuff from today that will have repercussions in the future and letting you make up your own mind of what that happens. So one of the things I believe in very strongly is the links in the chain. So each time we make a technological breakthrough, it forges a link, and it typically forges the next 3 links are inevitable for each technological change. We just don't always think that through, right? We just forge the first link, and then the other links just happen to us, and then we go, oh, well, we knew that was going to happen. We just didn't really prepare for it, right? So the links in the chain you'll hear me talk about a lot. So that's kind of a basic overview of AEON3. Any questions at that point? Everybody's pretty good. Okay, so there's a couple rules for the Facebook folks, not for them, but for us, for them. We have these microphones that switch on and off, and they're a little difficult to use, so try to listen to your volume level through the speakers. If you can't hear yourself through the speakers, they can't hear you online, and you won't be on the recording. It'll be a blank space where someone asks a question, and then I weirdly answer it. So try to use the mics as best you can. They're a pain. I apologize. We're trying to come up with better solutions for sound. Okay, I think that's it. Is there anything else I left out in the overview? Nope. Okay, the regulars are like, no, I think you nailed it. So our sponsors. Our first sponsor is the doc. Ta-da! This is the dock where we meet every Tuesday. We broadcast our pirate signal across the internet, and we get a lot of views. Our last few views have been in the thousands of views, which I thank you everybody on Facebook for watching that, and on YouTube. Really appreciate that. Also, Blue Flame Coffee makes our coffee in the back, which is really, really good. And then a special shout out to Hans from Pixel Mova, who does all of our audio and video, does a great job filming everything, and Hans is awesome. So there we go, that's our current sponsors. I don't think I'm leaving anybody out. If I did, I apologize. Okay, how we will make things in the future. How is it gonna look? This is a weird ride. So, as most times in order to see the future, it's important to go back and rebuild in your minds the chain of links that then built where we are today so that you can see where we're going tomorrow. And I know most of you already know where we're going tomorrow, just by a show of hands, or just yell out things. Go ahead and yell out things you think are going to happen in the near future. AI. AI, good one. There was another one? Driverless cars. Weird creatures. I like that one. I try to focus on manufacturing. Say again? The autonomy of things. The autonomy of things, the Internet of Things, sure. Yeah, those are all good things. Anything else on manufacturing, new things coming? Machine learning. Machine learning, very good. That's good, you guys did good. Okay. So, let's take a look at how we got here and where we are today. So, early man, I'm going way back. This is the Paleolithic, or what's called the Old Stone Age. Most people don't realize there's 3 Stone Ages. There's the Early Stone Age, the Middle Stone Age, and then what we call the Late Stone Age, or it has lots of other names. We'll get there. This goes from 2 million BC to 6,000 BC. Now, before we even start, I want you, this is my AEON3 thing, so you have to listen to it. I want you guys to think about how long a time frame that is. During that time frame, the human existence didn't really change. And really, it's all the way back to the dawn of life. All living creatures lived the same way these humans lived. That's an incredibly long time. Now I want you just to think about how short a time it's been from 6,000 BC to now versus 2 million BC. It's amazing what mankind is doing. And that's the road to the third eon. So that number is always, I've seen that number a billion times and it always blows me away. Okay, maybe not a billion. This is how they lived, right? They were hunter-gatherers, animals. This is the time of Cro-Magnon man, the early Paleolithic. So this is, or sorry, did I get that right? I hate it when I make a mistake. I did. So early Paleolithic, sorry, I'm a little tired tonight. You know, the tools they used were different than anything we see today. These were what's called chipped tools. So they didn't know how to shape or form or polish. And there's a lot of theories on why this was. One of the best ones I've ever heard, and I don't know if it comes from the book, is from the book Guns, Germs, and Steel, where he talks about the human ability to perceive shape. It seems like, by his definition, early man couldn't really conceive of shapes and didn't think of them the way we do. And that's the change. If you can't see a shape, you can't make an arrowhead. You can't draw a painting. You can't create writing. There's everything that's modern about modern humans you can't do if you can't perceive and remember shapes. And these chipping tools are very rudimentary, right? These are hand axes. You would hold them, and you can see how it's round on one end and sharp on the other. And you would just chip away to make a sharp edge and whack at things. That's a hand axe. And that was kind of the state of the art of Paleolithic tools for millions of years. Millions of years. That's how we lived. So then the Neolithic revolution happened. That's the last Stone Age, the modern Stone Age, the new Stone Age. So for me, this is the start of AEON2. And there's lots of theories on why this happened. Lots of theories. And it depends on where you were on the planet. It actually was a little bit different, but I say it happened everywhere simultaneously. That is true, but it happened between 13,000 BC and 6,000 BC at different points it started. But relatively, in evolutionary timescales, that's instantaneous, right? But it was a little bit different. And it was different based on where they were. A lot of people think that this revolution was because of weather. It is true the planet became warmer and was more habitable. There was more fruit and grains and trees and shrubs and animals, and it was a better environment than the late ice age that we were in during the Paleolithic. But regardless, we changed. We changed very fundamentally. And we went to something that was more like this. We began to be villagers. We began to work together in cooperation. And once we made that switch, we could then raise crops, raise animals. In fact, every single thing about human existence, almost without exception that you accept as the modern world, was created in the Neolithic age. Everything. The concept of religion, the concept of property ownership, the concept of laws, the concept of government, the concept of everything. Once we made that switch, everything changed instantaneously. It's amazing. And the tools they used were a little different looking, very different looking. Still stone and some early copper and some other very lame metals, but different looking, right? Clearly this species, this creature, understood shapes in a different way than their predecessors. And you can see right there the beginnings of the modern world in all those tools, right? You recognize things in those tools which the hand axe doesn't look familiar to me. When I look at it, it looks like a rock that someone made sharp. There's no shape to it. Those tools look like tools to me. Make sense? See the difference? It's a rocket forward. And it rocketed us right into the Bronze Age, right? Because once you start to have formation of societies and governments and things like that, then you can get pretty much to these guys. Everybody remembers the Spartans, right? Because they made that cool movie about them, so everybody remembers them. These guys are the epitome of the Bronze and Iron Age. Iron tools, bronze tools, excellent weapons, armor, ability to really create a different kind of government, a different kind of religion, a different kind of everything. The modern world. It also created philosophy. Once you have more stable societies where people can sit for longer periods of time and talk without fear of retribution or destruction by nature, you can then develop writing, philosophy, governments, religions, on and on and on. One thing leads to another. This is religions. This is Mount Olympus, blah, blah, blah. I do think it's interesting that there is a ironworking tool down the lower left-hand corner as part of that painting. Definitely understand that their mastery of the world is linked directly to the mastery of making steel, making metals. And then we broke apart into specialties. There were people that did steel. This particular group of people, some of you might recognize what they're doing there. They use this set of tools, except the ones on the right. These are masonry tools. So some people began to work with stone in a very different way than their predecessors, right? Early stone walls are just stacked rocks, basically. And maybe they stack the rocks by the size of the rocks. I need a rock about this big, and then they would mud pack them so that they could build a wall, right? And a lot of those walls still stand. But these people began doing something a little different with the stone cutting tools. This is masonry, right? This is very different than stacking rocks. Totally different concept, very specialized. And the structures that can be built once you learn how to hewn stone accurately are wildly different, right? These are the Roman aqueducts that carried water to and from Rome. And then there was these people, right? They didn't hew stone. They were specialists at metalworking. If you needed something made of metal, you went to this person. So we started to have a very definite specialization of labor in their early Neolithic stage. And they could make things that look like this. These are ancient Celtic metalworkings. And the intricacy of some of the things we used to make is amazing.
That's a belt buckle.
It is a belt buckle. You're exactly correct.
My old housemate used to make that.
It's pretty cool. What's interesting too is obviously this part's copper, but these are steel because the copper parts probably weren't strong enough to hold on, or gold. It's either copper or gold. But they added little steel buckles and stuff to it to make it stronger. And then we got to this level of metalworking. Think about the craft and skill it takes banging on an anvil with a forge to make something that looks like that, and the amount of time and value of that manufacturing process, right? And weirdly, we all kind of look back on this time frame and miss it because we like the concept that we can differentiate ourselves through our personal craft. We don't have a lot of craft today. We have Etsy. And Etsy's not bad, right? We make things, we sell them. It's better than what we had before Etsy. But really, craft is something that is momentarily lost to us. And those of you who heard me talk for a long period of time know that I'm hoping that craft comes back, and in some ways it is. Then we had this gentleman here who was working in a loom, making fabrics, right? Completely different craft, totally unrelated, completely different manufacturing process, different tools. And they made some amazing clothing. So if you ever have been to a museum where they have ancient clothing that people actually wore back in, in the BC, early AD timeframes, it's miraculous. You wouldn't believe that they could make clothing that looked like that, and yet they could, out of fabrics. And then there was people that worked in leather. This is an early Roman leather lorica, which is a Roman armor. They would make these out of different metals and also out of leather. But near the end of the Roman age, they didn't look like this, did they? They looked like that. The leather craft had exploded and become just completely different. Because if you could really craft in leather, your skills were worth more and you could make more money and live better. So by this point, you're probably wondering, why am I dragging you through all this history? But it's an important thing to understand the linking of the chains. This is where we are today. Everything we do today is almost identical to what happened in the Neolithic age. Long, long ago. Not really long ago, actually just a little while ago. So how is our current manufacturing different? So most people think they know who created the assembly line. Who created the assembly line? See, most people think they know who created the assembly line. It was actually Mr. Olds that created the assembly line, not Henry Ford. Mr. Olds thought that, of Oldsmobile fame, he actually invented many things in the automobile industry that he just doesn't get enough credit for. If you ever get a chance, just look him up and look at the inventions that he did. Henry Ford borrowed the idea of the assembly line from Mr. Olds. This is Mr. Henry Ford, and what he's famous for is something different. What Henry Ford did is he made cars cheaper. He made a cheap car that everyone could afford. Oldsmobiles were only for the very rich before this time frame, before the assembly line. But Olds was the one that invented the assembly line. Here's Ford's assembly line. This is actually a Ford assembly line back in, 1920s. People working, doing their thing. Looks pretty straightforward. I'm not exactly sure what they're making. They look like brake rotors, but that can't possibly be true. So, how long ago was that? 1920 something? 1918? Here's today. What's changed? It's cleaner, that's for sure, which is about quality control, right? There actually are people in here, and they're not in the picture, which is unfortunate because the title of this article that this comes from is Computers and People Working Together in an Assembly Line, and they're color-coded. The workers wear different color-coded uniforms. The robots are color-coded based on their function. The stages of the assembly line are color-coded, like the conveyor is yellow, the different stage gate back there is burgundy, on and on and on, so that you can, at a visual glance, tell exactly what's going on. But really, nothing has changed here. Just instead of people, the people are using a better tool. But it's still assembly line manufacturing. The way the car is being built at the end of the day is basically the same as the way the car was built back in Henry Ford's day. The difference is the technology has changed a little bit, but the technique being used is weirdly similar. The way we make screws, the way we make fasteners, the way we make metals, the way we make almost everything today really hasn't changed since the Neolithic age. We just don't bang on metal. We have machines that bang on metal. If you've ever been to an iron forge or an iron press or see people making sheet steel, there's just a big machine that does it instead of a guy with a hammer, because you can make more. But the techniques are the same. Nothing has really changed. We just do it more en masse now. Does that make sense? You guys with me? Am I losing you? Okay, don't want to lose you. Okay. So let's talk about different types of manufacturing. This is part that is always fun. Now, this is a very small list that I'm going to have, and I'm going to add a lot of stuff to it as I talk, because I couldn't put it all in here because it would be really boring. So additive manufacturing, most people are familiar with this. What's another word for additive manufacturing? Printing, 3D printing, exactly. So this is a metal 3D printer. So there are different kinds of printers, right? We can print with cells, we can print with plastics, we can print with metals. I saw an article today of a new company that's just starting that came up with such a brilliant idea, and it's so obvious. It's a new kind of metal printer that when it adds the layers, where it wants to make an inverse layer, which is a problem in metal printing. If I'm adding metal, how do I make an inverse breakpoint? So let me give you an example. A candle in a mold, how do I get the reverse break of the mold, right? A boat hull in a form, how do I get that out? How do I do the backside of something, right? Additive materials can't really do that. These guys figured out they have a nozzle that goes through and builds basically the mold, and then it puts a layer of silica sand, super microscopic, and then it adds the metal on top of that. And when they anneal the metal, the silica falls away, and you have full 3D printing. It's actually 4D print, because it's literally every axis. It actually is doing the parts that it can't touch, which is genius. And that machine is probably going to revolutionize additive metal manufacturing. But this is the standard way. There's a nozzle, there's metal powder that comes down, and there's a laser beam to heat it. So it basically melts the metal as it drops it on. And when it's in practice, it looks something like this. You can make things like this. Now, this isn't very good. It looks beautiful, right? But if you look at the surface of the metal, it's pretty rough. This is gone in 5 years. We have already on the horizon right now new types of 3D metal printers that can print in any metal, including stainless steel, that can make finishes that are superior to machined finishes. The problem is cost. How do you do that more cheaply, right? But we'll get past that. I would say probably in 10 years on the outside, I wouldn't be in the machinist role. It's going to be a tough job to have. That is called subtractive manufacturing, or most commonly referred to as machining. I am taking a block and then removing things that I don't want to get the finished product. Also has the same problem as additive that I can't get at the backside, right? I can't form the backside. I have to rotate the piece and come at it. It's always from the top, right? There's no, and we can have multiple axes of the tool, but I still can't get to the other side. I can't do, that both at once. And the additive material technique I saw today is actually a new technique that can actually do both sides at once using a substrate to simulate that backside. Pretty interesting. So here's just a general thing. Subtractive removes material by physical or chemical processing. Additive adds layers of material. But one of the things we haven't really gotten to yet, which is the first time I've ever seen it, is adding different kinds of materials designed to separate. That was a really interesting thing today. It really caught my attention. That's a new idea that I hadn't heard of before, and it makes total sense, of course, once you think about the way we manufacture things. We've always done that, right? We just haven't got there yet in our thinking of additive, because it's still brand new technology. So then there's a million other things, right? There's joining, there's welding, there's a million different ways. There's polishing, fastening or bolting things together. There's a million different ways to manufacture things. There actually is a website, I don't remember what it was, but it went through every type of manufacturing process there is by category, which was really interesting. And it was only like 3 pages long. And everything on that page, other than actually I would say additive is probably in there too, because we used to make sand castles and things like that, sand sculptures, going back thousands of years. So every technique that's on there goes back to the Neolithic age. Every one. There isn't anything new. These are just better tools. We want to get to something new. This is the new. I made that word up, constructive, because there isn't a word for this type yet. But growing things instead of manufacturing, instead of adding or subtracting or fastening or welding. See the difference? Well, it'll get easier. So these are cups that are being grown. They're not real pretty. There's a mold or something that's growing on that material that's growing, and it's growing on the substrate. It comes from the top and it's added in, and then it grows, and then they cut it off and it's a cup. I don't know about that. That's the beginning. Here's one that's easier. These are trees growing in a mold, in a form. Can you grow furniture? Turns out you can. You can induce the tree to grow into a form. Why haven't we been doing that all along? These chairs are so much stronger than any other chair you put together. There's very little carpentry work involved. It's one piece. One piece. There's a close-up on this website of the handles and the curves and the joints, and it's amazing. The tree grew around that corner, so all of its fibers go around the corner. It's not joined in any way. So massively stronger than most things we would make. This is the secret for the future. Start to think about what we could grow if we could build a substrate for things to grow on. And I know that's a little confusing, but to get things to grow, they have to have a substrate. And that's how nature works. And we're just trying to model nature now, right?
Do you know how long that took?
I would imagine it took a good long time, And it's not as fast as 3D printing, for sure. Probably took 10 years to make that chair. And I'm sure it's on the website, it actually says. But if you just look up on YouTube, or I'm sorry, on Google, growing furniture, you'll get this. And you'll also get a lot of other interesting things. There's a lot of people that are getting the knack of this now. As we start to figure out how to manufacture things at the cellular level, right? As we figure out how to induce cells to grow in a certain pattern, that may mean that this would only take a month to do. Now, how fast could someone make a chair is different, but then you have to weigh in the environmental change that you're doing by cutting down a tree, making planks, making wood pieces, right? How much wood are you wasting? What's the environmental impact? This has almost zero environmental impact. In fact, it probably has a positive environmental impact because of carbon sequestration and oxygen creation, lots of other good things that plants give us. And you could probably eat the other parts of the plants if you were using certain kinds of plants. So it's a different kind of way of thinking about, so what if it took 3 months to make this chair versus 3 days? Right? I didn't use any glue. That's kind of an interesting prospect. Get it? Good? Everybody good? Okay. So now it's time to watch a movie. Now this might pose some problems for our Facebook friends, but I'm just going to go with it and we'll see what happens. Okay, for those of you online, this is the URL. Can they see that? Well, I mean the guys online? Probably not. This is can they see that URL, do you think?
In a second, yeah.
Okay, there you go. Okay. Facebook people, write that down. I'm going to go ahead and play it for the people here.
But just how hard would it be to make a large, complex organ?
So we're trying to make a heart.
From scratch.
This is a video called The Heart Makers, and it's from the TV show Nature, the magazine Nature. It's a TV show. Why it's not playing through the DVI, I can't imagine.
Getting beating clumps of cells to organize into a three-dimensional heart requires scaffolding. At the Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, Harold Ott and his team
Can you guys hear that okay?
scaffold that nature provides. They're using a technique called decellularization to strip away all the living cells from a heart. The owner of this specimen died only a few days ago. It will sit
Doesn't
in
really
a
work.
specialized vessel for about a week, while chemicals wash away its DNA, lipids, soluble proteins, sugars, and all other cellular material. The building, if you want to renovate it and repair it, you can go in.
So this part's kind of weird. What they're doing is they're using the wash machine to remove all the cells from it. So what's left is just the cellulose material underneath, the lattice that the heart muscle is built on. Yeah, the substrate.
Afterwards, all that's left is a pale, white matrix of collagen and other structural proteins that once held everything together. Stripping away the donor cells removes the antigens that can cause the body's immune system to reject the new organ.
So that's an important part. Getting rid of the cells gets rid of any chance of rejection. So then what you can do is you grow cells on that structure that are using stem cells from the person you want to give it to.
Like this. But today, they're focused on how they might develop parts of the heart using the same process. They've taken a valve and part of the aorta from a decellularized heart and sewn it onto a cadaveric heart.
So they're not trying to create a whole heart, they're just trying to make parts for a heart.
Is the aortic root, including the aortic valve and the ascending aorta, and this has been decellularized. So this is a decellularized graft sewn onto a cadaveric human heart. I don't know if you can see here the right coronary artery button and the left coronary artery button.
I don't know if you guys can see that, but the two white parts, those are the two main arteries that go in and out of the heart. and there's no cells on them. They're just the lattice material.
And the right ventricle valve will track here of the cadaveric heart. This is the graft that decellularized the graft that has been sewn onto the heart. Amazing.
Looks pretty low tech, doesn't it?
Harold and his team want to check if their graft would be able to do what these structures do in real life, prevent fluids from flowing back into the heart.
So these guys are pretty much mad scientists, pretty much.
In order to the arteries that feed hungry heart muscles. They use a CT scanner at the hospital next door to take a look at their work. Harold pumps contrast fluid through the aorta to check for backflow and to see if the arteries that feed the heart.
So where the aorta comes down into the heart, there's the valve, right? So he's pumping fluid that shows up on the scanner into the top to make sure that the valve works and that it doesn't come down into the bottom, which is the goal of this experiment.
Back in the control room, Harold runs through his handiwork with radiologist Brian Kochhadra. What we have here is a CT of this explanted heart, and you very nicely injected the aortic root. We can see that you've sewn in your syringe to this area. Just to orient us, I'm really quickly going to put it into a 3D mode.
This is amazing.
Down here, and then window away so we can see what's left. Let's just blow that up. So,
That's some good technology right there.
the aortic root, does that look physiologic to you? What does the anatomy look like? Looks pretty close to what I would expect in a
And you can totally see in that picture that it is stopping it. All the colored, the white liquid is up in the top, not in the bottom.
the inner luminal smoothness, and it really does look pretty good. The process of decellularization and stem cell seeding could ultimately develop better replacement parts for the heart. These parts might prove more able to repair themselves and could theoretically grow with the young patient. To Harold, this technique could transform medicine. Last night, we were treating a patient who came in and developed sudden onset heart failure and is now currently on a machine that supports her heart and lungs. So, seeing these patients and seeing that clinical need and these patients' families and understanding where all this research funnels into ultimately, which is helping patients and developing tools to improve lives of these patients and end organ failure. That's really what gets us going, I think, and what keeps us going.
So pretty interesting. Guys like that? Pretty cool. Okay, we gotta shut down YouTube, otherwise bad things happen. Okay, let's see now. Go back here, do this, do that. And we're gonna start at the beginning.
To grow your own heart if you need a replacement for yourself.
Or grow anything. So it's really the concept of the lattice that I want you guys to get. That's the part that was missing. And if you go back to the tree, the way the tree form is working is they're letting the tree grow through the form. But what if you could come up with a lattice of the chair and induce the tree cells to grow everywhere at once? Wouldn't take months, it would take days. See the difference? That's the difference. One of the things that I talk about pretty routinely is when we become masters of biology. In order for us to move to the third eon, we have to get out of this technological adolescence, not about computing, which is what everybody thinks that's about, but about biology. We have to become absolute masters of biology. Biology needs to be as simple to us as hewing stone and working with steel and working with leather and working with cloth or concrete or anything else. It needs to be a technology that is just another technology that we build things out of all day long. It has massive repercussions when you think about that for computing, obviously for human lifespans, for strange creatures. Was that you that said that? Strange creatures that we'll create, right? Those things are going to happen. And that is the beginning of the move to AEON3. You'll know when we're getting closer when our manufacturing shifts from Neolithic manufacturing to third eon manufacturing. There's a definite point that you'll know that things have changed because you'll look at your iPhone and it wasn't built in a factory, it was grown. Parts of it already are. You probably didn't know that. The OLED screens that are inside there are organic LED screens. Those are grown, not manufactured, right? That's how OLED is made. This is going to become more and more and more common. It's the way that materials manufacturing will change, because if you can control things at the atomic level or at the cellular level, you can build things on substrates like cells on a heart. It's a really good example. That's why I used it, because it really gets across the substrate ideology in a way that I just hadn't seen done before. See the difference? That's the change. That's the big difference. Now, we are going to get better at everything else, right? We're going to make better 3D printers for metals, right? We're going to make better metal manufacturing. But it's going to start to look more like growing the metal and less like shaving parts of the metal off, right? It's going to change fundamentally. Fasteners become kind of weird when you're growing things. There's no fasteners in the chair because there's not a need for fasteners, because you're not taking disparate pieces and cobbling them together with a hammer, which is the way we do it in the Neolithic age. In the third eon, we will have everything that grows together as one piece. We will induce the two pieces of metal to become one. We will induce the two pieces of wood to become one. We will induce the ear to bond onto the body, and on and on and on and on. We will make new corneas so I don't have to wear these dumb glasses. We'll make biologic cochlear implants so that I don't have to wear this dumb microphone thing. Right? Those are the things we want. So get this in your head. That's what I want to do, is get you out thinking a little different, because I know you all came in here thinking I was going to talk about 3D printing. 3D printing's cool. 3D printing is Neolithic. Totally Neolithic. It's just better a little bit than hammering on steel. It's taking molten metal and layering it. But we've known how to do that for a very long time. That's not a new idea. It's just a better computer-controlled, more accurate way of doing it, using our computing technology to make a better hammer. Growing things is totally a new thing. Now, we've grown, biologic stuff for years. We've grown all types of agricultural products. That's been done. We do grow a lot of cultures, right? We make some plastics. We make a lot of things that actually are grown today. But that's not the way we start thinking about manufacturing. It's when we can't figure out any other way to do it, we go to growing things. We go to the natural way of doing it. And that's really the point that I want to get in your heads, is this way is man against nature. The other way is man using nature. They're totally different approaches. That's why I say it's AEON 2 to AEON 3. In AEON 2, we're always against nature. We're trying to conquer nature. We're trying to fight against it. We're trying to use it as a tool. In AEON 3, nature becomes our tool. And what will give us that a lot is our AI partners, right? That's something that we're going to have to get used to. That manufacturing plant that has, all of the robots, right? Would the robots be able to run that plant by themselves? Probably not. Probably not.
I agree with her.
Yeah, I think it probably not. Humans are unique in what they do, right? We're good problem solvers. We're really good at thinking things through. Even the most advanced AI on the planet, it's not you, right? It could mimic you. It could do things that you would normally do. It can make decisions the way you would do. But trying to build a computer to simulate a human seems rather silly to me, right?
Think about a bridge movement or.
Can you use the mic? Sorry, I know it's annoying, but it's good for them.
If machines now can think about a chess movement and think ahead, and they must think of other things that are more complicated, I think they're going to be able to know there's a set of parameters that they have to fulfill, and they will.
We'll fill it, yeah. It's a good question. So I would come at that a little different, from a little bit of a different angle. Chess is a game that has a set of rules that were written by man, right? You can teach the computer a set of rules and teach it, and this is how it works truly for the Deep Blue project that did that. They taught the AI every single chess move that could possibly be made under the rules of chess. And then it would simulate those rules in its very fast brain and then pick the one that was most likely to succeed. Humans can't do that. That is not the way humans work. That's the way AIs work. They can think faster, do those simulations, and come up with probabilities, which is not what we do. That's not how you think. It looks like how you think when you see him playing chess and he's scratching his head and trying to figure out why he's losing to the computer, right? It looks like human thought. It is in no way related to human thought. We don't do that. We look for advantage. AI doesn't have any idea what that is, and neither do we when we think about it. Think about how many times you think about, I want to gain an advantage here. I want to gain the upper hand. And then it just comes to you, and you just do it. You didn't run through scenarios and probabilities by the millions. You don't do that. We don't do that. We're different, and we'll always be different. There's a mic right there. So the answer to your question is, would a computer invent chess?
Just a slight thing, but kind of on the same
There's a little switch there, yeah.
Put it real close to your mouth.
There you go.
just maybe just like a slight thing to add. So like computers, AI are really good if you can clearly define the set of parameters that you have to work with, or the objective, right? So it's kind of related, but like something like chess is very clear, right? You want to checkmate the other person's hand. But in situations where the parameters aren't so clear, or maybe there's, let's say, humans are kind of good at that ambiguity. Like AI, I don't think, it can't yet define really itself the objective very well. That's an interesting thing.
Yep, that's exactly the same thing. Yeah, it's exactly true. So when just one second, when I think of the next generation of AIs that we're going to make, so I had one in my head and it just flittered out. It'll come back in 1 second though. They're built, the IBM Cancer Initiative, which I've talked about before, so I apologize for repeating myself. IBM built an AI that worked with the top cancer researchers in the world, and there's a panel of the top 15, I don't know the exact number, top cancer researchers in the world. They get together and they look at the worst cancer patients with the most bizarre cancer problems, and they, from their vast experience, try to figure out what are the right therapies for these very unique cancer patients. So IBM built an AI to assist them. Now what that AI does is it reads every article in every language, in every publication, everywhere in the world, instantly when it's published. And then from that vast storehouse of knowledge, IBM trainers trained it on which probabilities are the ones that it should know, and it was very much helped by medical professionals. And it developed a logic system that can, based on information it ingests from all these publications, it can recommend treatments. And it was like 99% accurate on coming up with the same recommendations as this panel of very experienced doctors. And in a couple cases, it recommended some treatments the doctors hadn't, and when the doctors went back and looked at it, they were with the AI. But that's not human thought. That's what AIs do. They do that massive study thing. No person in that room could possibly read every publication and every article in every magazine everywhere around the world in every language. There's no way. But yet they still got to such a high percentage of accuracy. You'd think the AI would have crushed them, right? Because they just know their experience and knowledge, their brains just connect to that truth in a way that AIs don't. AIs have to have data. They can filter through big data, massive amounts of data, and come up with probabilities that then produce what seem like human thought accurate results. And that's great. We need to use them to do that, to fill in where we're not capable of doing. What we shouldn't think of AI is as something that is going to replace us. They need us and we need them. We're two very different things that operate on very different basic levels of how we operate. You think in a very fuzzy logic way. You intuit. Machines don't do that. Get the difference? Totally different. Go ahead, Pat. Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, when you're talking about manufacturing, you're going to have a product that was, of course, invented by somebody, a human. Now you've got a product, and the goal is to make that product with a lot of parameters. Make it as efficiently as you can, as inexpensively as you can. Maybe you want to employ a lot of people, maybe you don't want to employ a lot of people. You can put that into your
Environmental impact is a new one we have to deal with now. Yeah.
I mean, I think just like the medical situation, the AI is going to be able to look at all the possibilities and probably manufacture much better, set up a program for manufacturing better than a human.
Absolutely. There's a great TED Talk from, I forget his name, but he did a book on AI human partnerships. And if you just put into TED, AI human partnership, you'll see this talk. And the designers came up with, and I think they were building a car automobile frame. I'm actually positive that's what they were making. And they gave it to the AI, and what the humans did is they came up with the specifications of what they wanted. They wanted it to have this kind of tensile strength, this kind of rigidity, this kind of flexibility, and then they gave it to the AI. Once the AI had the parameters of what the humans were trying to achieve, which is not something the AI could do, the AI then designed the car frame using data, massive amounts of data. You know what the car frame looked like? Totally organic. It looked like a butterfly wing. It was a lattice material. It was out of science fiction. And it's exactly what the humans asked for. And the humans would have never done that. It's that combination of the two together that we get the future from. And no matter how much we advance ourselves, right? Say we take ourselves and put us in a computer. This is where me and Ray Kurzweil differ, right? Ray thinks that AI becomes the future of humanity. I could not disagree more. I think humans are the future of humanity. Whether we're operating in a human body or a scientifically engineered body doesn't matter to me. It matters that I'm still me because I'm different fundamentally. And this is a software guy saying this, right? I'm different fundamentally than a constructed artificial intelligence. They're just a different thing. Now, sure, the modern machine learning techniques that we use simulate more and look more like human engineering, but it's humans that are training those AIs, so the AIs act human. But really the processes going on underneath and the way the software is running and the way that they're constructed is very old school AI, right? We just figured out that training them is superior to trying to give them all the data so that they can be instantaneous, which means you have to grow an AI, not manufacture an AI. And I'm telling you, as you move towards the third AEON, you're going to hear this in your head. Bob said this like 10 years ago. We need to grow things, not make things. Grow things, not make things. And AI is one of the best first examples. You can't make an AI. You have to grow an AI. It's the only way to get a good one. Go ahead, sorry.
I may be saying the same thing that you just said differently because I was thinking that humanity and machine is very binary. So what if the substrate of the computer was organic and then you have a different kind of singularity?
Yeah, so one of the things that I talk about a lot is the mountain that we're built on. So we're built on a mountain of evolution, and it started with the formation of the universe. If you think about what it took to make you, how long it took, the processes that went through it, all of the chemistry that had to become, how the universe had to form, it took billions of years to make one human being. And all that is in you, right? All of that evolution process is in you. All of that structural change in the universe is in every one of us. Every single human being, every creature, every animal is a 100% unique construct in the universe. 100% unique. That's pretty stunning. So if I take that uniqueness and I move it to a different machine other than this thing and I move it to something else, as long as you can preserve the uniqueness, it's still a human being. If you think about growing an AI, what's the mountain of evolution that an AI is built on? The speed of the computer with which it runs on. So as we move to quantum computers and we get exponential growth in computing power, we're going to get exponential growth in AI. And they will look and sound and act human, but they won't be human. And this will become more apparent as time goes by, because if you ever talk to an AI, you know right away it's not human. And no matter how good we get at that, they're never going to be like us, because they don't have a lineage. They're not something that was grown the way we were grown. They're grown on a different entire path than us. And they have a different skill than us, right? They're information-based. We're not information-based at all. We're very, I use that word fuzzy. We're very fuzzy logic-based. So I don't see a future where humans are replaced by AI. I see a future where humans and AI become merged together, and they augment the things that we're really not good at. We're really bad at math. We are really bad at math. We're really bad at data, at understanding large amounts of data. We're really bad at so many things, it's hard for me to count all the things that we're really bad at versus AI. But if you come at it the other way, the reverse is totally true. AI is bad at all those things that we're good at. And one of the things we're figuring out right away, if you, a human, start teaching an AI, you teach it all the wrong things on accident because you're teaching it to be a human, which it's not. So it mimics what it thinks your probability matrix is, and then it gives something that is biased, always. The best example of this, what is it? Everybody in the room knows it's been here. What do I need to look up on Google to find the bias of an AI? Grandma. Look up grandma on Google. Do you get pictures of all grandmas? No. You get white, 67 through 75-year-old, white, classic grandma that engineers at Google think is the world. And I know they're changing this because somebody is probably listening, but they did a change. Somebody last week, I think it was last week, looked it up in Spanish. And in Korean, it still shows all white grandmas, but in Spanish now it shows all Spanish grandmas, which is a new change because it didn't used to do that. So that's an AI total bias that the programmers, when they were training that search algorithm, gave, because to them they were probably all white males of a certain age, and that's what they think of when they think of grandma. So they taught the poor bloody computer, this is what grandma looks like. But it's not true. It's not true at all. It leaves out all the rest of the world. In fact, most of the world, we're the vast minority, right? Thanks, Google. So it's very difficult when you train AIs. And AI is just one kind of manufacturer. We're manufacturing artificial intelligence, right? And we're growing it. There's all kinds of new things we'll run into when we start trying to grow stem cells, or we start trying to grow molecules, or we start trying to grow materials, right? First of all, we have to figure out the substrate idea, this lattice, infrastructure that it grows on. We don't really understand that yet. That's a new idea for us. Biologists get it because, well, that's how biology works. So it's simple for them. There's a cellular wall and there's cellular structure, and then the parts of it grow on top of that. So it's easy for them to get it. Start thinking about like the table in front of you. What's the table? I talk about these tables all the time. They can always come up in conversation. How are they made? Well, parts of it are folded, right? It's sheet steel. Parts of it are welded. And parts of it are fastened with screws. And parts of it are manufactured in layers, the MDF that makes up the table surface. And then there's a plastic thing on the top that's actually a photograph of wood to give you the wood look to it. And then some rubber injection molded material on the edge. Think about how many processes it took to make that bloody table. Wow, that's a lot of manufacturing, isn't it? That's a lot of different techniques. Is that the table that you want? Would you be happier with a table that was like one of those chairs that was grown? It would be stronger, it would be lighter, it'd be cheaper to make. What was all the things you came up with? It'd be all those things.
Might smell funny.
Might smell like wood. Whereas this smells like plastic and glue. If you ever smelled one of these when you pull them out of the box, you've all had that new IKEA furniture smell. Oh my God. Because the materials that make up that thing are toxic. It's the way, it's Neolithic. It's the way we've been making things for thousands of years, and we are rapidly approaching the end of that era. You guys are all very patient. Sorry, I keep repeating myself. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, like, just a couple of years ago, everyone was saying the future of manufacturing was nanotechnology, and that
Yeah.
little robots are going to dismantle every atom and reassemble them and do new stuff. So
Sure, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. So that will look like growing. So we won't grow things like we think of today, when like organic growth, right? It'll be mechanical growth, but it's more like molecular assembling that looks like growth. And one of the tools that makes that possible is nanotechnology. And there are many, many different nanotechnologies now that are very much advancing and looking promising, but they're still 25 to 50 years off. And the problem with that time frame is no one will invest in something that has that long of a return cycle, right? I need something that I get a 3 to 5 year return at 10 to 20 times my initial investment, or I'm not in. That's tough. That's 3D printing, right? That's the only way you're going to get there right now, or drone manufacturing, right? So if you look at where the money's going, it's going to the very short term next gen stuff, which means that slows down the future, which I think is okay, because we're still not even caught up with even understanding some of this stuff, right? So it's okay to go slowly into this. There are some downsides of either biological or nanotechnological growth of materials. We're operating on such a level that there's so many dangers in there that we do not know about right now, right? We haven't thought about engineered viruses or all the things that could go wrong in this, right? There's just a list that's never ending. Anytime you break into a new technology, you're breaking open Pandora's box. So it's okay to go slow. But I think the mechanism of that's causing that to really lag isn't a technological or human understanding problem. It really is a money problem. That if you're in nanotechnology right now, you're wandering around looking for government grants and very long-term grants, and they're very hard to come by. Sucks to be you. If you're a 3D printing company and come up with a new nozzle that does that thing, you got $100 million right there. There you go. Because I can sell that company in 2 years for $1 billion. So I'm good. Make sense? So any other questions? You guys have been really good. Hans, what time are we at? It's probably time to let our Facebook friends go. It's definitely time to let our Facebook friends go. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming to this edition of the AEON3. We do sit around afterwards and just talk without me being up here. We get much more cozy, but we need to let our folks on Facebook go. Thanks for watching. Please join us next week. Next week, we're going to be talking about the future of dating and relationships, which is going to be really an interesting subject because it's very rapidly evolving, and I think everybody will enjoy it a lot. So thanks very much for joining on Facebook. Thanks, you guys. You guys are awesome.